The story follows a young chef named Kari who returns to Chicago after a family tragedy to take over his family's sandwich shop. Having come from the world of fine dining, Kari now faces the challenge of managing a small, chaotic sandwich spot. The series begins with a man standing on a bridge where he notices a small white cage. Curious, he walks over and opens it, only to be attacked by a massive bear. But it turns out to be just a dream. Kari Bado, the chef, jolts awake at 6 a.m. He quickly gets ready to receive a meat delivery. But instead of the 90 kilograms he had ordered, the delivery guy only brings 11 kilograms, already paid for by someone named Lou. With no money and desperate to keep the restaurant going, Kari starts selling his personal items to afford more meat. He even puts together a ball breaker tournament to attract customers. After finally getting meat from another supplier, Kari instructs his sous chef, Tina, to start prepping ingredients. While they're working, a woman named Sydney shows up, saying she called earlier about an internship. Intrigued, Kari reviews her resume and is impressed. When he asks why she wants to work there, she tells him that the shop has been her favorite spot since she was a kid. Pleased with her response, Kari accepts her as an intern and explains the schedule. They operate from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. with a break at 2 p.m. for meals. Kari then gathers the team: Marcus, the bread specialist, Tina, Jeff, and Richie, his late brother Michael's best friend, who's been helping at the shop for years. But Richie is doubtful about Kari's ability to run the restaurant and questions his decision to hire Sydney. Tension builds when Richie confronts Kari, accusing him of running the place into the ground. He compares him unfavorably to Michael, saying Michael built the shop into something respectable, while Kari is tearing it down. In a heated moment, Kari asks why, if Michael trusted Richie so much, he didn't leave the restaurant to him. Richie is left speechless. Determined to prove himself, Kari returns to the kitchen and urges everyone to speed up. There's only an hour left before opening. But Richie continues to create chaos, frustrating the rest of the team. Kari becomes so engrossed in the work that he doesn't even notice his hands are bleeding until someone points it out. His drive to turn the struggling shop into something better is pushing him to the edge. Later, Kari visits his sister, who suggests selling the restaurant and going back to fine dining. But Kari refuses. He believes he can rebuild it into something great. Back in the kitchen, Kari praises Marcus for perfecting a soft bread dough and offers some sandwich samples to the team. They're amazed at how he turned low-cost meat into something delicious. While the team takes their lunch break, Kari stays behind, waiting for customers. As the crowd outside grows impatient, they begin banging on the windows. Furious, Kari confronts them, but ends up getting attacked. Richie steps in, firing a gun in the air to break up the crowd. He then takes charge, promising the winner of the ball breaker competition a year's supply of Italian ice cream. Although Kari is impressed by how Richie handles the situation, the tension between them still lingers. After this chaos, we see Kari still hard at work long after 3 p.m., showing his relentless commitment to saving the restaurant. A flashback reveals his time in a high-end kitchen, where every assistant chef followed his commands. But Kari wasn't the only top chef. Others, including one who didn't like how Kari affected his calculations, constantly harassed him. Even as Kari focused on plating dishes perfectly, this chef would scream at him, going so far as to say he deserved to die. The abuse Kari endured in the fine dining world spills over into how he runs the sandwich shop. He frequently yells at his staff, pushing them to work faster without realizing they're already doing their best. One day, while the team is cleaning, the ice cream machine breaks down. Richie, the only one who knows how to fix it, is assigned the task. After a long shift, Richie and Kari share a cigarette outside. Once the others leave, Richie stays behind to clean the entire kitchen, making sure it's spotless before heading home. Exhausted, Kari finally gets a moment to try the bread he hadn't tasted earlier. Later, he watches a tutorial on perfect bread dough as he lies on the couch. As he drifts to sleep, the harsh voice of his former chef echoes in his mind, reminding him of all the criticism he endured. This triggers a nightmare in which he nearly sets his apartment on fire due to his own negligence. Thankfully, it's just a dream. Morning arrives, marking the start of another day at the shop. While Kari works, Sydney approaches him about becoming a full-time employee. She believes she's proven herself and presents a detailed breakdown of the restaurant's expenses. She suggests serving lunch from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and dinner from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., and proposes sourcing ingredients directly from farmers to reduce costs. Most of the expense comes from delivery fees. She also recommends hiring someone to handle deliveries. But with a small staff, the options are limited. Marcus is already overloaded, and the others, Jeff, Tina, and Ibra, can't drive. Richie's license is suspended. Kari doesn't have many choices. As Kari thinks over her ideas, he overhears Richie speaking with an older woman named Nancy from the Chicago Health Department. She's replacing Ron, who recently passed away. Worried Richie might mess up the inspection, Kari steps in. Nancy's inspection turns into a disaster. She finds a massive hole in the wall, points out the lack of hot water in the sink, which is essential for sterilizing utensils, and even discovers a cigarette pack sitting on the stove, a major fire and contamination risk. After the inspection, she gives them a C rating. Everyone is upset, but Kari is furious. Many of the violations were Richie's fault. Richie had patched the hole with paper and left the cigarette pack where it didn't belong. Kari orders him to buy some plaster to properly fix the wall. Richie protests. He can't drive because of his suspended license, so Kari instructs Sydney to take him. Despite the C rating, Kari doesn't feel ashamed. He even posts the result on the front window proudly. But then he notices someone outside who fills him with dread. Jimmy. Jimmy is someone both Kari and Michael owe money to. Inside the restaurant, Jimmy tells Kari that Michael had owed him $300,000, a debt Kari hadn't known existed. Jimmy had even thought about breaking Kari's legs over it. Now he offers to buy the shop for a fraction of its value. Kari refuses. He's determined to keep the restaurant and pay off the debt himself. Meanwhile, Sydney and Richie go out to buy plaster. On the way, Richie vents about Kari, telling Sydney that Michael didn't want Kari in the restaurant because he was always difficult to work with. Curious, Sydney asks what really happened to Michael. Richie reveals that Michael died by suicide 4 months ago. He shot himself in the head. Back at the restaurant, Michael left behind more than just memories. He left a financial burden that Kari has been quietly managing on his own. Kari confesses that he's been using his personal funds to keep the restaurant afloat, including covering overdue utility bills. When Sydney and Richie return to the restaurant, Richie gets a call from his daughter. During their conversation, he admits to messing up. He bought the wrong type of plaster and also mishandled the cigarette situation. Fortunately, Sydney had picked up the correct supplies, saving the day. Meanwhile, Kari is increasingly overwhelmed by the restaurant's growing debts. Desperate, he calls Pete, Sugar's husband, to ask for a loan. But Pete avoids the request and quickly hands the phone to Sugar. Even though Kari needs the help, he can't bring himself to directly ask his sister for money. Instead, he changes the subject, letting the opportunity slip away. Back at the restaurant, Richie returns to patch a hole in the wall, only to find someone else has already fixed it. Inside the wall, he discovers a note. As the team gears up for another busy day, they receive a wave of incoming orders. Spirits are high, and there's a sense of momentum. Sydney is officially hired as a full-time employee, signaling a new chapter for the restaurant. Later, Kari steps outside to smoke and gather his thoughts. But when he reaches for his cigarettes, he finds they're missing. Searching his pockets and retracing his steps, he remembers leaving them on the stove earlier while cleaning. The scene shifts to Kari sitting alone, staring out at the ocean's calming beauty. It's revealed that Kari had been heading to a support group for people dealing with alcohol addiction. In the meeting, he listens as a woman shares her experience of resisting cravings and the challenges she faces at home. She talks about how alcoholism isn't something that can be escaped or controlled. It must be recognized for what it is, harmful. After the session, Kari returns to the restaurant to face another hectic day of service. The crowd is large and tempers flare in the kitchen. Richie keeps yelling for things, despite Kari's earlier request for everyone to stay calm. Still, the team pushes through and completes the service. When the day ends, Kari tries to relax but can't sleep. He picks up a book about alcoholism, reading how it's often described as a family disease. After flipping through a few pages, he decides to head back to the restaurant. To his surprise, several chefs, including Marcus, are already there, having come in early. Marcus asks why Kari is in so soon, and Kari admits he couldn't sleep. Then he notices that Marcus has posted one of his dessert recipes on the wall. The two share a moment as Kari explains the story behind the recipe, which serves 12 people. He walks Marcus through the importance of stirring the sugar consistently, avoiding overcooking, and using a generous amount of Japanese sweet wine. Following that conversation, Kari calls Sydney into his office. He tells her he's decided to make her head chef. He's ready to leave behind the old-school way his brother Michael used to run the kitchen. Instead, he wants to fully implement the French brigade system, with Sydney leading the culinary team while he handles the business side. At first, Sydney hesitates, unsure if she's ready. But her desire to end the rigid hierarchy at the restaurant and build something new gives her the motivation to accept the role. Afterwards, Kari hands out brand new aprons to everyone, signaling the changes to come. He gathers the crew and explains that they'll adopt a French brigade system. Kari will stay on as executive chef, Marcus will focus on pastries, and Sydney will be in charge of sauces. Every service they'll review performance to cut down on mistakes. Some, like Tina and Era, push back at first, but once they see the new setup actually lightens their load, they come around. Later, back in the office, Kari gets a call from a man named Nico. Richie walks in and asks who it was. Kari tells him, and Richie offers to handle the matter, insisting Kari let him deal with it. Wanting a break, Kari heads to his addiction support meeting. With Sydney now running the kitchen, the weight of responsibility hits her. Hours blur together as she darts from station to station correcting things, reminding Tina to mince onions finer and nudging Marcus to soften his bread dough. Even so, Kari remains dissatisfied. When the onions turn out mushy, he snaps at Sydney. She explains Tina prepped them, but Tina hadn't fully respected her authority. Owning her actions, Sydney chops another batch herself, only to discover they're missing. She searches the kitchen until Marcus admits he hid them as a joke. Upset but composed, she presses on. Marcus apologizes and offers to help portion stock. Sydney refuses, yet when she accidentally spills it, Marcus helps clean up. The mess drives home how dysfunctional the beef really is. Sydney feels overwhelmed. She even slices her hand, but refuses to show weakness. During her break, she steps outside to eat a meal Era cooked. Kari joins her. Sydney confides that she feels he's dumped everything on her and hasn't stepped in when the brigade system falters. Kari replies he'd been testing her ability to stay calm under pressure. He assures her she can handle it, and the crew will respect her. He also predicts a surge of customers that night. He's right. The place is packed. After the rush, Kari listens to a voicemail from his sister Sugar saying she misses him. He ends the night alone, visiting the beach to absorb its calm. Before dawn, Marcus is mesmerized by artfully arranged loaves of bread in a bakery window. Elsewhere, Richie and Kari argue while loading supplies for Jimmy's children's party. Richie wants to promote with a giant hot dog balloon wrapped in cloth. Kari hates the idea. When Richie tries to cram it into the car, it bursts, leaving them with no prop. Marcus pursues his pastry dreams, wowing Sydney and the others with a new cake. So tasty, they joke it's to die for. Sydney checks on Tina, who's mashing potatoes. Tina still resents being supervised. At the party, Kari watches Jimmy and Richie bicker over Richie's unfinished errands. Their quarrel pauses when Kari asks where to set up the food. While prepping, an elderly guest mistakes Kari for the brother who died by suicide. Kari gently explains that was Michael. Richie arrives to help, and Kari notices he's taken anxiety pills. Richie admits he needs them to cope. Back in the kitchen, Marcus stays laser-focused on pastries. Era, observing, is impressed by his dough-rolling skills. As Marcus works on his dessert creations, his friend Chester stops by to deliver a book Marcus had requested. While the two briefly chat, Sydney walks in and curiously asks about Chester's presence. Chester explains that he's just there to drop off the book and quickly leaves. After he's gone, Sydney reassures Marcus that she'll support him with whatever he needs to continue perfecting his desserts. Encouraged, Marcus returns to experimenting with new donut flavors, which impress his colleagues with their heavenly taste. Meanwhile, at Jimmy's party, Kari is serving hot dogs and engaging with guests who know him as Jimmy's nephew. He's a familiar face at these gatherings, though he doesn't seem entirely comfortable in the environment. Things take an awkward turn when Pete, Sugar's husband, starts telling people that Kari once worked at a world-class restaurant, info he gleaned from a magazine article. While Pete might think he's complimenting Kari, it puts him in an uncomfortable spotlight. The scene continues with Kari trying to juggle conversations and food service while quietly stressing about the mounting restaurant debts. Back at the Beef, the staff runs the kitchen smoothly without him, proving how far they've come. At the party, Kari shares a light moment with Jimmy and Richie, but the mood shifts when Pete joins them. It's clear he doesn't really fit in. The laughter dies down, and the group's body language becomes stiff. Trying too hard to blend in, Pete grabs a drink and makes an offhand comment about all the kids lying around in the yard, seemingly asleep. That's when Kari checks the drinks and realizes something's wrong. Richie had added Xanax to them earlier, and now the kids are unintentionally sedated. Panicked, Kari informs Jimmy. But instead of being angry, Jimmy chuckles, relieved that the kids aren't screaming and causing chaos. Back in the kitchen, Tina is struggling with her workload. Sydney notices and makes a new sauce to help lighten Tina's responsibilities. Initially resistant, Tina tries the sauce in private, and her surprised expression says it all. It's much better than her own version. Though she doesn't say it out loud, she's clearly impressed. Later, as the party winds down, Kari finishes up, packs his equipment, and shares a heartfelt moment with Jimmy. They reminisce as Kari looks at an old photo of his father with Jimmy. Jimmy recalls a near-tragic accident they once had, speeding in a car when a child ran out into the street. Jimmy managed to stop in time, but Kari's father was thrown from the vehicle. The conversation turns to the massive debt Kari is trying to manage, $298,500, plus interest and expenses. It's a weight that continues to bear down on him. Back at the kitchen, Tina finally decides to share her latest sauce with Sydney. Hoping Sydney won't like it, she's caught off guard when Sydney genuinely praises the flavor. In a quiet but powerful moment, Tina respectfully addresses Sydney as chef for the first time, signaling her acceptance of Sydney's leadership. As the day ends, the exhausted team gathers to try Marcus's desserts. The mood is light,
and when Kari takes a bite, he can't hide his admiration. He calls it delicious. Marcus lights up with pride, having earned Kari's sincere approval. Early the next morning, Sydney wakes before dawn, her mind racing with new ideas. She heads to the beef earlier than usual, only to find Kari has beaten her there. They start discussing the recent dip in evening sales, and Kari agrees that the menu needs a refresh, something Sydney had already suggested. They decide to sit down soon to plan it properly. Suddenly, they hear a strange noise from the bathroom. Thinking it's a minor plumbing issue, Kari goes to check, only to be shocked when the toilet explodes, sending water gushing across the floor. With only a few hours before opening, Kari scrambles to manage the chaos. He calls Falk for help and rallies the kitchen staff to start cleaning up. While the others mop and sanitize, Kari pulls Tina, Era, and Sydney into the kitchen to talk through the new menu. He demonstrates how to prepare onions to maximize their aroma and flavor, explaining each step with precision. Tina is visibly impressed by the depth of flavor in Kari's dish, her face lighting up with delight.
Falk arrives to handle the bathroom disaster, but Richie can't resist bothering him with immature pranks. Eventually, Falk loses his patience and stops working. Frustrated but curious, he casually asks if it's true that Kari's looking to hire 2 new chefs and wonders if he might be able to ditch his repair job and join the kitchen staff. The unexpected question stuns Richie into silence, adding a touch of humor to the hectic morning. Back in the kitchen, everyone is deep into their prep work, signaling a team that, despite all the chaos, is starting to work more and more like a true brigade. Marcus concentrates on baking bread, helped by Chester, while the rest of the kitchen readies dishes for the day's guests. Tension flares, however, when Falk tells Richie he wants to become a chef. Richie scoffs at the idea, mocking Falk's claim that playing keyboard counts as talent in a kitchen. Their teasing devolves into insults, and soon a physical scuffle, leaving the other cooks stunned as they try to stay on task. Losing patience, Kari douses the pair with water, like separating 2 fighting cats, to break them up. In the chaos, Falk blurts out a bombshell. Richie has been dealing drugs behind the restaurant. Shocked, Kari calls Falk and Richie into a meeting. Richie admits he hasn't exactly been selling drugs, but has been handing them off in the alley. He explains that the stress and debt from the COVID shutdown pushed him to find extra income because the restaurant alone couldn't cover his bills. At that same moment, Marcus accidentally shorts out the electricity when his bread mixer malfunctions, plunging the entire building into darkness. Richie can't help laughing at the bad luck while everyone else scrambles. A quick check reveals the worst-case scenario. The walk-in fridge is dead. Falk inspects the damage and tells Kari the condenser is blown. Repairs will cost about $2,000. Desperate, Kari calls Pete, Sugar's husband, who kindly agrees to lend them a portable cooler. Relieved, Kari imagines how catastrophic it would have been if all the meat had spoiled. As he and the crew shift stock into Pete's cooler, Sugar arrives and pulls Kari aside. She's upset that he called Pete instead of her. She feels he only reaches out in a crisis. Kari, overwhelmed, won't argue. Changing topics, Sugar asks whether he's attended any AA meetings. When Kari says yes, she hugs him tightly. Back inside, inventory manager Sydney realizes there's nothing more to do except keep moving supplies. With the kitchen half disabled, the team decides to sell food out front using whatever ingredients remain. Surprisingly, customers stay cheerful and sales don't dip. Still, the looming repair bill hangs over Kari. Later, Kari steps into the alley and finds Marcus brooding, blaming himself for the blackout. Kari reassures him with a story about ruining an awards ceremony on the very night he was named the world's best chef. Mistakes happen. What matters is bouncing back. He urges Marcus to rejoin the line. Afterwards, Falk jokes they'll need $5,500 to fix everything unless Richie goes back to selling dope. Feeling triumphant, Richie wants Falk to admit he lost their earlier fight. Falk grudgingly does, and everyone gets back to work.
When power returns, the chefs treat every piece of equipment with extra care, especially Marcus. That night, Sydney, fast asleep, dreams up a new dish, ribs braised in cola served with risotto. The scene shifts to a lively family gathering in happier times. Michael, still alive, tells a story about a trip to Syria, asking young Kari to grate Parmesan while Richie cheers him on. Later, Richie retells that same story during a date, describing Michael as the perfect man and reminiscing about a night they stayed at a bar until 7 a.m. The date ends badly. The woman isn't impressed. Frustrated, Richie shows her photo to Tina, who says she wasn't right for him anyway. Richie, ever the playboy, shrugs it off. As prep ramps up the next morning, Sydney brings a new idea to Kari. He listens, but feels she's misreading the room. They're slammed. He notes her resume mentioned impatience, reassuring her they'll review menu changes when the time's right. Sydney accepts the feedback gracefully. Kari then steps out to meet Sugar, who's fuming about the restaurant's paperwork. The IRS just informed her that Michael's tax filings were incomplete, and she now needs the 2018 payroll records. Hearing this, Richie heads back inside to dig through files. While Richie and Sydney are chatting near the register, a gunshot suddenly shatters the front window. Panic erupts. Richie, angry but composed, ushers everyone to safety, then goes outside. He confronts a group of local toughs who deny involvement, claiming they just arrived. Knowing how the street works, Richie strikes a deal. They can smoke near the restaurant if they find out who fired the shot. With the immediate danger settled, Richie returns to the shattered dining room where the cooks are sweeping up glass. Meanwhile, Sugar again presses Kari to locate those 2018 payroll documents, warning that if they don't, the IRS could seize her house. Overwhelmed, Kari steps outside to clear his mind and shares a cigarette with Richie. They discuss the missing payroll documents, and Richie confesses that he and Mike were never adept at managing paperwork. The conversation shifts when Richie opens up about his daughter, who recently asked about the meaning of their last name. According to her mother, it signifies a bearer of bad news, a sentiment that upsets Richie, further straining his bond with his daughter. Not wanting to linger on his sorrow, Richie heads back inside, encouraging Tina to open the restaurant so they can dive into work and set aside their troubles. As the chefs begin serving orders, Sydney, with her usual ambition, urges Kari to try her new dish. Though Kari and the other chefs find it delicious, he advises patience, noting it's not yet ready to be a permanent menu item. Undeterred, Sydney discreetly adds the dish as an extra option for customers. Meanwhile, Kari and Sugar continue their search for the 2018 payroll documents. During the process, they fall into another argument. Sugar confronts Kari about his distant demeanor, accusing him of rarely checking in on her. Kari, silently acknowledging his struggle to connect with his siblings, including Mike, stays quiet. Sugar warns that the restaurant will consume him over time, but Kari remains optimistic, determined to uphold the legacy their late brother left behind. Breaking his silence, Kari asks Sugar how she's holding up, and in that moment, they uncover the missing 2018 payroll slips. As the restaurant hums with activity, another disturbance erupts outside. Richie scrambles for his gun, fearing another threat, but Sydney takes charge, yelling for everyone to stop bickering. She defuses the tension by introducing herself and encouraging others to do the same. Before Richie can intervene with his weapon, he realizes Sydney has resolved the conflict by offering sandwiches to the gangsters, even promising drinks if they agree to stop causing trouble. With the situation calmed, the chefs return to their tasks. Richie, however, stirs things up again, trying to distract Tina with idle chatter. Annoyed, Tina brushes him off, insisting he let her work. Richie confides in her that he's uncertain about the younger chefs running Mike's legacy restaurant, and admits he's been contemplating leaving, though he's unsure where he'd go or what he'd do. The scene shifts to Kari, pleased with how the chefs are collaborating, communicating effectively, and keeping the kitchen running smoothly. Outside, Richie watches as police arrest the gangsters lingering near the restaurant, bringing a sense of resolution to the day's conflicts. The narrative opens with a view of Chicago, once infamous for chaos and crime, now a vibrant hub of commerce and urban life, with people conducting transactions and the city's growth evident everywhere. Kari enters the beef and hears Ebra reading an article about their restaurant aloud. The piece includes some negative reviews, but a few critics praise their sandwiches, noting them as particularly enjoyable. With a hectic day ahead, Kari urges everyone to focus and get to work. Sydney tries to justify adding her new menu item, claiming she didn't know who the reviewer was. Kari brushes it off, telling her to prepare for the day. He instructs the chefs to inventory their supplies, but Marcus lags behind, fixated on perfecting his donuts, which irritates Kari. Tensions flare when Richie arrives, questioning the new menu item. Feeling insulted, Sydney defends herself, escalating the situation. Their argument intensifies, and they decide to settle it privately at the register just before customers arrive. Richie confronts Sydney, asking if she's truly committed to the beef or trying to sabotage Mike's legacy. Offended, Sydney retorts, mocking Richie's inability to use his phone for orders. Exhausted by the bickering, Kari tries to intervene when he hears a commotion from the kitchen. Rushing back, he discovers a massive pre-booked order. 78 slices of chocolate cake, 99 portions of fries, 54 servings of chicken, 30 salads, and a staggering 255 beef sandwiches, all due in just 8 minutes. The order, a mistake by Sydney, infuriates Kari, who orders everyone to work overtime. The volume is nearly impossible to fulfill in such a short time, but they press on, managing the chaos. The tension between Richie and Sydney persists, with both provoking each other. While Kari shouts at the chefs to wrap the hundreds of sandwiches needed, Richie keeps pestering Sydney as she's prepping vegetables, pushing her to her limit. In a moment of anger, she threatens him with a knife. The chaos isn't limited to them. While Kari struggles with the overwhelming orders, Marcus tries to get his attention about the donuts he's just finished. Furious at Marcus's misplaced priorities, Kari throws the donuts and orders him to help the others immediately. In the heat of their argument, Sydney, overwhelmed, accidentally stabs Richie in the buttocks.
Stunned and silent, she changes into new shoes, grabs her bag, and tells Kari she's leaving the beef. Sydney walks out, leaving behind the chaos she partly caused, unwilling to fully accept blame for the disaster. The scene shifts to Kari, acting as if he's in a melodramatic soap opera, sarcastically lamenting the sorry state of the beef, the restaurant Mike left him after taking his own life. Kari tells an imaginary audience he was once a renowned chef, but this is revealed as a dream sequence, interrupted by a bear's sudden roar, jolting him awake. He finds himself surrounded by photos of dishes that linger in his mind. After rising and freshening up, Kari attends an Al-Anon meeting where the leader invites attendees to share. Kari raises his hand, introducing himself and explaining his presence. He reveals that his brother Mike was an addict before his suicide. Kari recounts his time as a chef at one of the world's finest restaurants, but Mike's death left him with a struggling diner. He recalls how he and Mike bonded over cooking in their youth, dreaming of opening a restaurant together, only for Mike to later push him away, barring him from the kitchen for reasons Kari never understood, leaving him feeling worthless. Determined to prove Mike wrong, Kari vowed to make their parents proud, which he did as a successful chef. But he abandoned that life to take over the beef after Mike's death, now grappling with the mess Mike left behind. The scene returns to the beef, where Kari gathers the staff to share mixed news. They can still serve sandwiches for lunch, but they'll close early for a private party hosted by Jimmy, meaning fewer dinner portions to prepare. Meanwhile, Sydney invites Marcus to her place for dinner, both reeling from Kari's frustration over the recent chaos. That night, Sydney cooks for Marcus, sharing stories of her path to becoming a chef. She describes spending her last dollar on world-class meals after dropping out of an international culinary school. Over dinner, Marcus asks if she plans to return to the beef. He shares his intent to go back and resolve things with Kari, but Sydney is uncertain, considering other job options. They both agree, however, that Kari's cooking is among the best they've tasted.
Back at the Beef, Kari retreats to his office, overwhelmed by the debts Mike left. Tina, noticing his distress, asks if he's okay. Kari opens up about the financial chaos, but Tina admits she knows little about it. She recalls how Mike once refused to buy basic items like napkins for the staff, and how she had to urge him to treat his chefs better. She reminds Kari that, despite everything, her affection for Mike endures. After their meal, Marcus wonders if Sydney will ever return to the Beef, while he plans to go back. Sydney remains unsure, weighing her next steps. The night of Jimmy's party arrives, and after serving the guests, Richie and Kari step outside for a smoke. They discuss their regrets, particularly Richie's deep sorrow over failing to stop Mike's drug addiction. He wishes he could have restrained Mike to prevent his downward spiral, but it's too late now, and they must accept Mike's absence. Their talk is cut short by a commotion inside the restaurant. They rush in to break up a fight, but the situation escalates. Kari gets punched, and Richie, in a fit of rage, knocks the man unconscious. Richie is arrested and taken to jail, awaiting news of the man's recovery, fearing a potential murder charge if he doesn't wake up. From jail, Richie calls his ex-wife, simply saying he's done with work for the night. The next morning, the police wake Richie, informing him the man has regained consciousness. Relieved, Richie is released and hurries to find Kari, who had fallen asleep in the waiting room. They return to the Beef to clean up the mess. At the restaurant, Tina warmly welcomes Richie, already aware of the previous night's drama. As they resume work, Marcus returns, ready to take up his role in the kitchen. Kari announces they'll need extra effort due to a neighborhood festival. While preparing, Kari discovers a hidden note with a recipe tucked behind the pencil holder. The find sparks something in him, and he picks up the pace, especially after a pork delivery arrives. While waiting for the meat to cook, Kari suffers another panic attack, nearly setting the restaurant on fire. Fortunately, the team intervenes, extinguishing the flames, and Richie urges Kari to take a moment to breathe. Once calm, Richie hands Kari an envelope containing a letter from Mike. Kari retreats to a quiet alley to read it. In the letter, Mike reminds Kari to recall his words and includes a family recipe for homemade spaghetti. Inspired, Kari decides to prepare the dish for the staff's lunch. While making the sauce, he's shocked to find bundles of cash hidden in the tomato cans, neatly wrapped stacks of dollar bills. He calls the chefs to open all the cans, uncovering even more money. At that moment, Sydney, having decided to return, walks in and is stunned by the scene. Kari simply smiles, saying they can now build the restaurant they always dreamed of. In the final scene of Season 1, Kari decides to close the Beef and announces The Bear, the new restaurant they'll soon open. As a final gesture, he shares a meal of his family's homemade spaghetti with the entire team. This concludes Season 1 of The Bear. Like, comment, and subscribe for a recap of Season 2 soon. Thank you for watching.